other day. So the council has been called. They actually haven't, I don't think they have yet. They haven't quite started, or maybe they did. Yes, they did start it. Page 26, 27. Chapter 3, which is about Adeon, the son of Taliesin, the chief bard of Prydain. And Eladir, the prince of Pinlarcow, says at the bottom of 26, I guess it is, when Taran gets too close to his horse, Eladir says, keep your distance from Islamak. She bites. We are much alike, Islamak and I. And Adeon says, your horse carries a difficult burden. Eladir replies, what burden do I carry? Last night I dreamed of us all, Adeon said, thoughtfully fingering the iron clasp at his throat. You I saw with a black beast on your shoulders. Beware, Eladir, lest it swallow you up. He added, the gentleness of his tone softening the harshness of his counsel. Spare me from pig boys and dreamers, Eladir retorts, and with a shout urged Islamak further up the column. Now, if you remember, Gwydion broke them up into 3 groups, and he said, Taran, Adeon, and Eladir would be in a group to essentially watch the pack animals and provide any aid if needed when they try to break into Iran's fortress. And Eladir's not that happy about that. He wants to be in the attacking group to win glory, as does Taran. And Taran asks him, what did your dream tell of me? You were filled with grief. Taran, what cause have I to grieve? I'm proud to serve Lord Gwydion, and there is a chance to win much honor, more than by washing pigs in weeding gardens. What does Taran think of washing pigs and weeding gardens?
That they're, a small man's job.
Okay.
Feels like it's repetition because that's all they ask you to ever do.
Okay. It's low work. That is, it's not anything to be proud of. Listen to what Adeon says in reply. I have marched in many a battle host, but I have also planted seeds and reaped the harvest with my own hands. In other words, I have served Lord Gwydion in battle and such, but I've also planted and weeded gardens. And I have learned there is greater honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped in blood. Okay? This idea is going to get repeated. There is greater honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped in blood. How? What kind of honor, first of all, is Adeon talking about? Because when Taran says, I can earn great honor with Gwydion, what's he thinking?
I think it teaches you, like what he's trying to say is it teaches you build a better character because you learn responsibilities, I think you grow wisdom, and
Okay, possibly.
Taran thinks that, the only way he'll be granted great, fame and respect is by battling with Gwydion. But Adeon says, well, if you, sow some crops into the ground and harvest and feed the people that depend on you, there's honor in that as well because you're responsible for them. Okay. While a field steeped in blood is useless and doesn't help anybody and there's great sorrow.
Well, yeah, think of the different things that are being compared. Tilling a field, planting it, harvesting it, and that's one side. That is, all of those have to do with life and living. Adding to life, increasing life, keeping life going on. A field steeped in blood, however, only deals with death. And the steeping in blood, what does to steep something mean?
So
We usually only use that verb with one thing.
marinating.
Well, marinating is referring to meat. Steep is what you do with tea leaves. You pour the water over the tea leaves and you let it steep. What does that mean? You are bleaching out from those leaves all the flavor. You're taking everything away. So a field steeped in blood, what happens to it?
It has no more life to give.
Yeah, it kills it. So he says, I have learned there is greater honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped in blood. Because a field well plowed is ready to produce life. It's ready to give life. Not only the seedlings that will germinate from seeds, but life that will be taken from whatever the crop is that is grown from that. Okay? Whereas, if it's just a field steeped in blood, not only is the field dead, not only is the ground dead, it doesn't produce anything. So life isn't added to in any way. Do you think Taryn understands that at this point?
Nope.
Nope, it's completely over his head. Okay? So they go on. And Adaon relates to Taryn what he knows of nature. Of forest lore, he had, top of 28. He had studied deeply, and Taryn listened in wonder, as Adaon told the ways and natures of woodland creatures, of bold badgers and cautious dormice, and geese winging under the moon. And Adaon says, there is much to be known, and above all, much to be loved, be it the turn of the seasons or the shape of a river pebble. The shape of a river pebble. You know, how can that be loved? It's Tolkien's idea of recovery again. Seeing it with the eyes of a child. Indeed, the more we find to love, the more we add to the measure of our hearts. Adaon is talking about, when he's telling Taryn about the natural world, he's telling it from the perspective, let's say, of a wacko environmentalist who loves the tree just for the tree, not for what the tree can produce for us. Wood to build homes or wood to heat fires, etc. But just the very fact of its treeness. And then all the animals that live in the woods. The more we find to love, the more we add to the measure of our hearts. What does it mean, the more we find to love? The more we can love things that are around us, rather than just people or these kinds of things. He means the everyday stuff of the world around us. How do we add to the measure of our hearts?
Because we're able to appreciate the smaller things, which gives way to a larger appreciation of bigger things.
Okay. Or, rather than use the language of smaller and bigger, smaller and bigger, simple and complex, or simple and complicated. The more we can love the simple things in life, the better able we will be to appreciate the more complex things in life. Okay? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What in the world is he talking about? He's talking about loving everything. Everything. The plants we see, the plants that are in your way, you're having to hack through them, the rocks, the trees, the oceans. Adaon's face was bright in the early rays of the sun, but a trace of longing had come into his face. I don't think it's only the early rays of the sun that are making his face bright, by the way. He says, you know, I'll be glad when we're done with this task. Why? Arianlin, my betrothed, waits for me in the northern domains, and the sooner Iran's cauldron is destroyed, the sooner I can return to her. Now we get a little more idea of why Adaon sees everything as something to be loved. He himself is full of love for a person. Okay, that kind of defines his being. So, they keep going on, and we see Taran and Eladir, and their horses jostle, and Taran is knocked off the trail with his horse. Eladir reaches down, picks up Taran, puts him back on the trail, and then he jumps down off his horse and gets down under Taran's horse, and by himself lifts the horse back onto the trail. How much does a horse weigh?
Like
Several hundred pounds. Okay? And we're told, Terrence says, top of 31, I have never seen such a feat of strength. And Eladir, confused and frightened, seemingly, says, I did not mean for you to fall. And then he kind of catches himself. My concern is for your steed, not your skin. I don't care about you, it's for your horse. But notice, he only says that after he kind of catches himself. Okay? So, the event is related to Gwydion. He's like, am I going to have to separate you two? Am I going to have to send you back to Caer Dallben? So, they continue going. And Taran rides up alongside Gwydion, page 35. They're getting ready to separate the three groups. And Taran says to him, let me go with you. He pleaded again. It's kind of like, Uncle Owen, I want to go up this year. I don't want to farm again. As Luke Skywalker sounds in the first Star Wars film. If I was man enough to sit with you in council and to come this far, I am man enough to ride with your warriors. Really? How manly do you have to be to sit at the table and listen to talk?
not very.
Not very. What has Taran shown about himself so far on their little journey?
That he can fall off a cliff.
Okay. He's petulant. What were he and Eladir doing?
Racing.
You're not going to be in front of me. Forget it. It's like two 18-year-olds or two 60-year-olds in cars on a highway. You're not getting ahead of me. No, you're going to try and cut me off. You're not going to. I'm going to go faster than you are. So if I'm man enough to sit in council, Gwydion, do you love danger so much? Before you are a man, you will learn to hate it. Notice, you're not a man yet. Yes, and fear it too, even as I do. Keep a bold heart, that is. Keep trying, Taran. Why? Your courage will be tested enough. You want danger? Don't worry, it's going to come. And Taran says, top of the next page, I wish Gwydion had let me go with him. Or with Morgant. Why? Because Morgant's at least going to be doing something. He's going to be leading the diversionary tactic. In other words, we're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. We're not going to, what? See any action. We're not going to see any action, so we're not going to get any glory. Edaon, do not wish that. Why not? I would have been proud to follow Morgant. Next to Gwydion, he's the greatest warlord in Prydain. He's brave, powerful, and there's something about him. He says, I saw a vision the night before we left. Warriors rode a slow circle around him, and Morgant's sword was broken in weeping blood. Okay, when warriors ride in a slow circle around another warrior, it means that guy's dead. They're riding around his grave. Taran, well, maybe there's no meaning in it. That is, maybe it was just a dream. Does it always happen that your dreams come true? Or that your dreams are always true? There is truth in all things if you understand them well. Taran, you never told me what you dreamed about yourself. Or Doll. Or Dolly, or Call. What did you dream about yourself? Kind of pushy, but he doesn't answer. So, page 40. Gurgi shows up, Eilonwy shows up, because you know you're not going to be able to stop them. And Eilonwy says about what they've been eating in following them. It's not that we're starving, she says, page 40. Gurgi did remember to bring along the wallet of food. Yeah, it's a gift from Gwydion, you know, and it's certainly a magical wallet. Never seems to get empty, but the food's nourishing, I'm sure. It's wonderful to have when you need it, but, you know, it's kind of tasteless. You can only eat so many Cliff Bars, in other words, because that's essentially what it is. Or you can only eat so much granola. After a while, it just all starts to taste like cardboardy gravel. Okay? Terrence says you shouldn't be here. And she says, you're a fine one to talk. Besides, I don't think you're angry as all that, not after what you said to Eladir. It was wonderful the way you were ready to smite him because of me, not that you needed to. I could have taken good care of him myself. I didn't mean you weren't kind and thoughtful. You really are. It's just, it doesn't always occur to you. For an assistant pig keeper, you do amazingly well. You know, notice that backhanded praise. For an assistant pig keeper, that is for a lowlife nobody, you do okay. Okay. So, we're going to skip a little bit more. Chapter 5, they get chased by the huntsmen of Anuvin. And there's a little battle, and they run away right away. And page 49, Terran says to Eladir that it's no dishonor to shun the huntsman. He says Gwydion would have done the same. And then he tells him towards the bottom of the page, you fought well, son of Penlarkau. I think that I owe you my life. Eladir, it's a small debt. You value it more than I do. In other words, your life means nothing to me. Okay? And they run, pages 50 and 51, into Gwistel, another dwarf, fair folk person. And they go with him into his cave or underground cavern. And they talk with him about their journey and such. In 56 and 57, we get introduced to Caw, the crow. And we also hear, as Adion starts to examine Eladir's wound, Eladir says, page 57 in the middle, what, are you a healer as well as a dreamer? If it does not trouble me, why should it trouble you? Adion, if you do not choose to take it as a kindness, take it as a precaution. There is hard and dangerous travel before us. I would not have you fall ill and delay us. In other words, I'm not thinking of you, I'm thinking of us. But he's not really. He just uses that language because that's the kind of language Eladir understands. Why is Adion attempting to treat Eladir's wound?
Because he wants to.
Because he wants to and he's in pain. And Adion wants to relieve pain. Okay? So, we talk about the huntsman, and Terran mentions the cauldron, and Gwistel says, well, I know where the cauldron is. Where does everybody think the cauldron is?
In Anuvin.
In Anuvin, at Aron's castle. But it's not. Gwistel tells them the cauldron is with the we'll come to that later, because I don't want to give, out some kind of names. So, they try to decide what should they do. They know where the cauldron is. They're going to find out where the cauldron is. So, do they ride ahead and find Gwydion and tell him?
Nope.
Do they, that's one of their options. Do they go back to Kirdalbin?
No.
So Gwistel says, Caw says, 63. Croaks out Ordu, Orwin, Orgok. And Gwistel explains, bottom of that page, 63, All Ka meant to say is that the cauldron is in the hands of Ordu, Orwin, and Orgok. That's all. Terran, who are Ordu, Orwin, and Orgok? You'd better ask what are, okay, then what are they? I don't know, it's hard to say, it doesn't matter. They've got the cauldron, you might as well let it rest there. Terran says, I say we should find them and take the cauldron. Crystal's like, good luck with that. Okay? So page 65 is when they're deciding, what do we do? Do we go take the cauldron from these three people? Or, as Arlanwi says, Gwydion ordered us to meet him at Caer Cadairn. He didn't say anything about going off in the opposite direction. Terran, you don't understand. When he told us to meet him, he was going to plan a new search. He didn't know we would find the cauldron. She says, well, you haven't actually. You just know where it is. Okay? 66 and 67. Who's speaking here? Dolly says, we'll have enough trouble getting to Caer Cadairn without splashing around in swamps on a wild goose chase. You listen to her, that is, Arlanwi. She's the only one outside of myself who has any notion of what ought to be done. Terran, maybe we would be wiser returning to Gwydion. King Morgan and his warriors can lend us their strength. But in the back of his mind, he yearned to find the cauldron, to bring it in triumph to Gwydion. Elder says, Pig boy, you have chosen well. Return with your friends and let us make our parting here. Elder is going to go off after the cauldron. He says, do you think I would turn my back now when the prize is nearly won? Go your way, pig boy, and I shall go mine, to the marshes of Morva themselves. Wait for me at Caer Cadairn. Warm your courage beside the fire. I shall bring the cauldron there. So he and Elder get in a argument, and let's see. Dolly says, page 67, there's more risk than otherwise if you go popping off into the marshes of Morva. And Alonwi says, and you're not the one to decide anything, talking to Terran, and neither are you, Eladir. Adaon commands you both, if I'm not mistaken. So she kind of brings back, oh yeah, Gwydion said Adaon's in charge. Here's Eladir saying, I'm going to go off and get it. Terran says, I want to go off and get it. And Adaon's just been listening to all this, says, not my choice. I have said nothing for or against your plan. The decision is greater than I dare make. Terran, but of all of us, you know best what to do. Adaon, perhaps you will understand one day. For now, choose your path. Terran of Kiradalbin, wherever it may lead, I promise you my help. Okay? He says that to Terran. He doesn't say it to Eladir. It's almost like he's just ignoring Eladir. So he's essentially putting his services under Terran's guidance. Terran says, I'll go to the marshes of Morva. Adaon, so shall it be. Not even Eladir makes a reply. Okay? So Gwistil wishes them well, and they leave. And as they're going, we're told, bottom of page 70, Eladir had spoken to no one since leaving the melancholy Gwistil, and Terran had seen the cold rage in his eyes after the companion's decision to press on to the marshes of Morva. And he says to Arlanwi, I think he really would have tried to bring back the cauldron by himself. And you know how much chance he would have had alone. That's the kind of childish thing I'd have done when I was an assistant pig keeper. Notice what he's thinking.
He's not an assistant keeper.
I'm not an assistant pig keeper anymore. I'm a
Warrior.
Hero in training, warrior. Arlanwi, as she always does throughout all 5 books, brings him back to reality. You're still an assistant pig keeper. You're going to these silly swamps because of Eladir, and anything else you say is pure nonsense. See, she sees Only reason you're going is to stop Eladir from doing it. Don't tell me it wouldn't have been wiser to find Gwydion. Okay? So Adion and Terran are riding alongside each other. And Terran says to him, in a low voice so nobody else can hear, I wonder now if we should not turn back. I fear you have kept something from me, and had I known what it was, I would have chosen otherwise. That's Terran's way of saying, you haven't had any more dreams, have you? You haven't seen something. And we're told, if Adion shared Terran's doubts, he showed no sign. In the saddle, he rode unbowed, as though he had gained new strength, and the weariness of the journey could no longer touch him. In other words, he's sitting up straight in his saddle. Like he knows he's riding towards something, rather than just slogging on. On his face was a look Terran had never seen before, and could not fathom. In it was pride, yet more than that. It held as well a light that seemed almost joyous. And Adion says, there is a destiny laid on us to do what we must, though it is not always given to us to see it. A destiny to do what we must, though we don't always know what it is. So, often meeting your destiny, Adion is suggesting, means just doing what you think you ought to do. Terran, I think you see many things. It has long been in my mind, and now more than ever, the dream you had the last night in Caer Dallben. You saw Eladir, you saw King Morgant, you foretold I would grieve. What did you dream of yourself? It's the second time now he's asked. Adion, is that what's bothering you? I saw myself in a glade, and though winter lay all around, it was warm and sunlit. The birds called and flowers sprang up from bare stones. I wondered, wow, that's beautiful. I wonder what it means. Terran, yes, it is beautiful. I feared it had been unhappy, and for that reason you chose not to speak of it. As we're going to see shortly, what did Eladir leave out of his dream?
You mean Adion?
Yeah, what did Adion leave out of his dream? Yeah. That when he was in this glade,
He was dying.
he was dying.
Isn't that what he means though from saying it's a winter, but it's still sunny and
Well, yeah, and the flowers that sprang up from bare stones.
so great?
So yeah, there's no dirt there that the flowers. These are flowers strewn on his grave. Okay. So Terran's like, wow, that's very nice. I thought you had a bad dream. So they go on, and they notice Eladir's horse, Islimak, appears to be going lame. And Terran says, let me look at her hoof. Eladir warns him, her hooves are sharp and she'll kick you. So Terran gets down, he raises the horse's hoof, he calms her down first. On top of 74, as he'd suspected, there was a small jagged stone wedged far behind the shoe. Pulls out his knife, pulls it out, and he says, this has happened even to Melanlas. That is, it's happened to my horse. There's a place deep in the hoof. Anyone can miss it if they don't know. It was Call who showed me. Okay. Notice what Terran is doing. He's not saying, I know all this on my own. Call. Why is it important that it's Call who showed him?
Because he wants to show Eladir he's not trying to lord it over him. He's just
Okay. Why else? Does Eladir, or should Eladir, let me put it that way, should Eladir have respect for Call?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Call just a farmer?
No.
He's a famous warrior in his own right. Okay? Terran had expected no thanks. This is after Eladir says, You have tried to steal honor from me, pig boy. Will you now rob me of my horse? How did he try to steal honor?
By going after a cauldron.
They're going after the cauldron. Taran had expected no thanks, but the angry thrust of Eladir's words took him aback. He turned away and says, your honor is your own, and so is your steed. What stone is in your shoe? In other words, what is making you lame, Eladir? Right? If you have to walk a long time and you got a stone, a sharp pebble in your shoe, how does it start to manifest itself other than pain in your foot? You start to grimace. Okay? If you're unable to change your clothes or shoes for a long time, it makes you ill at ease. He's saying, what's bothering you? And Taran says, Fluter says that foul-tempered nag is the only thing he cares about. As far as I can see, the only thing that cares about him. They're two of a kind, if you ask me. Adaon says to Taran, I commend your patience. The black beast spurs Eladir cruelly. What's the black beast? He refers to it several times.
It's Eladir's own insecurities.
Okay.
His ego.
Is it his ego? His pride? Is it his insecurity?
Because he's a fourth son of a not so noble and rich king.
Yeah, he's the last son of a nobody king, of a nobody kingdom. Okay? Is it envy for others? Envy for what Gwydion has? Because he's a real prince? Is it anger at the world? I mean, he does seem angry at everybody, right? It's not just Taran. I mean, he speaks ill to Gwydion. He speaks ill to Dalbin. Taran, I think you'll feel better once we find the cauldron. There will be glory enough for all to share. Adaon, is there not glory enough in living the days given to us? He's not talking about the same kind of glory. What does Taran mean by glory there? See, Taran's equating this with this, which really means this. He's equating glory with honor, but he really means fame. He wants everybody to know the name Taran. You can leave the assistant gatekeeper part out. Okay? That's not what Adaon is talking about, though. What glory is he talking about?
Just a general happiness.
Is it even happiness? It's just the pleasure of being alive. There's a scene in the Harry Potter novels, in the 7th novel, after Harry's wand is destroyed, and Hermione rescues him, and he wakes up, and it's Christmas morning, and he's on this hillside. He's in a tent, but he's looking out over the hillside, and we get this description. It's this beautiful winter morning. The trees are covered in snow. He hears down in the village below church bells ringing because it's Christmas morning. And the narrator essentially says, Harry should be full of wonder at what he sees. And instead, he feels like an insignificant speck to the universe because of what has just happened. Okay? It's the image of that glorious view that is completely dead in Harry's eyes. Adaon goes on. You should know there is adventure in simply being among those we love and the things we love. And beauty, too. Okay. I don't know that he has, but I would almost bet money that Lloyd Alexander read Tolkien's essay. Because he's essentially talking there entirely about recovery. There is adventure in being among those we love. What does adventure mean? It's dangerous.
Excitement.
It's exciting. Being around those we love. Those we see day in, day out. And there's beauty there too. But he says to Taran, but I want to talk to you about something else. I have few possessions, for I count them of little importance. That is, stuff. Stuff doesn't mean much to me. But these few I treasure. His horse, his packets of healing herbs, he says in this. And he touches the clasp at his throat. So three things. He says, it's a gift from my beloved, Arianlin. Should any ill befall me, they are yours. That is, you get my horse, you get my packet of herbs, and you get this thing. I have watched you closely, Terran of Caradalvin. In all my journeys, I have met no one else to whom I would rather entrust them. Gwydion? Nope. His father? Nope. Dalden? Nope. The king? The great king? The high king? Math? Nope. Terran, assistant pig keeper. Why?
Because he believes Terran would have the best appreciation for his things, and it'll teach him, that, a few things may be important, but it's really the important things.
What has he seen Terran do? What did Terran just do, for example, for Elodie?
Fixed, or got the rock out of the
Got the rock out of his horse's hoof. Okay. Why did he do it?
He wanted to help Elodie.
He wanted to help Elodie. Okay. Why else? What's another reason that isn't actually a reason? I mean, the book doesn't say, Terran did this because. What's he really doing?
He's trying to make Elodie like him a little more.
Okay, possibly. Is anybody going to make Elodie like Terran?
Is he making up for Elder's saving?
Possible.
He wanted to be altruistic.
You're getting closer.
He's just using the knowledge that he has from farm life that he usually
Okay.
overlooks.
Yeah, partially. He's being totally unselfish. Totally. He's not thinking of himself at all when he pulls the stone out of the horse's hoof. First and foremost, he's thinking of the horse. The horse is in pain. I can alleviate the pain. Because the horse is in pain, Elodie is in pain. Because of how the horse moves. I can maybe ease some of Elodie's burden. He's not thinking of himself. Is anybody going to go up to the bards of the north and sing a song, write a song, about how Elodie removed the stone from the horse's hoof? Woo! Big deal, right? No. He does it simply because he can. And he's not thinking of himself. Terran, do not speak of ill befalling you. We are companions and protect one another against dangers. Besides, Adeon, your friendship is gift enough for me. Just having you as friend, that's all I need. Nevertheless, we can't all know the future holds. Will you accept them? And yet we've already seen he does know some of what the future holds. Will you accept these gifts? Terran. Okay, I will. So they decide to rest till midday. Terran takes his rest while Elodie is on watch. He wakes up and calls out, Elodie, why didn't you wake me? And Elodie is gone. And for the first time, page 76, Terran saw deep alarm in Adeon's face. And he says, we must overtake him quickly. Elodie's pride and ambition swallow him up. I fear to think what might happen should the cauldron come into his hands. In other words, what might Elodie try with the cauldron?
Try to make his own cauldron.
Make his own army. Okay. Page 77, they hear what they think is a bird. Adeon says, that's not a bird song. And they're caught up by the huntsmen. This time they have to fight, though. They can't turn and flee. Page 78 at the bottom. One of the huntsmen tries to attack Terran. His blow glances off the jacket of the skins, but the huntsman lost his footing, dropped to earth. Terran turns and sees In front of him, he saw the snarling face with its crimson brand, the arm uplifted to throw the blade. Suddenly, Luagor was between him and the huntsman, that is, Adion's horse. Adion rose in the saddle and swept down with his sword. As the huntsman toppled, the knife flew glittering through the air. Adion gasped and dropped his weapon. He slumped over, clutching the dagger in his breast. Okay? Chapter 9. They ride on a little ways to a place of safety, and we're told, page 80, right about in the middle, they find a spot. The wind howled by the trees, but the sheltered spot, by contrast, seemed warm. The driven clouds broke away. The sun turned the branches to gold. Adion raised himself, and as he looks around, his eyes scanned the glade, which is what he saw himself in, and he nodded briefly. This is a fair place. I shall rest here. Terran will heal your wound. Adion, I'm comfortable enough. The pain is gone, and it is pleasant here, as warm as spring. Why is the pain gone?
Because he's dying.
Yeah, he's nearly dead. He's mostly dead. And suddenly, Terran looks around, and he realizes, this is what you dreamed. Yeah, pretty close. You knew then. You knew there would be peril for you. Why did you not speak of it before? I would never have sought the marshes. We could have turned back. He says, no, it's true. That's why I dare not speak. I've yearned to be again at the side of my beloved Erin, and my thoughts are with her now, but had I chosen to return, I would ever wonder whether my choice was made through wisdom or following the wishes of my own heart. Would my choice have been a wise one or an emotional one? I see this is as it must be, and the destiny laid upon me. That is, this is how things were supposed to work out. I am content to die here. Terran, you saved my life. You will not lose your own life for me. We'll go to Cader and Gwydion. He pulls the iron clasp off of his neck and hands it to Terran. Says, guard it. It is a small thing, but more valuable than you know. Can't. Such would be the gift of a dying man, but you shall live. Take it. That is not my command to you, but the wish of one friend to another. He presses it into Terran's hands. His eyes closed. His face was calm, and thus he died. And the other companions just sit there and mourn him. Top of the next page. Terran says, Adion warned that I would grieve, and so I do thrice over. He thinks this is what Adion was talking about. His grief's going to be much worse than this. Okay? He has the brooch. And we're told, like his spirit, Terran's dreams were confused, filled with dismay and fear. In them he saw the mournful faces of the companions, the calm face of Adion. He saw Ellidyr seized by a black beast that sank its claws into him and gripped him until Ellidyr cried out in torment. The restless images gave way to a vast sweep of meadow where Terran ran through grasses shoulder high, desperately seeking a path. Overhead, a bird flutters, spreads its wings. He sees a stream with a great boulder in the midst of it. On the boulder lay Fluter's harp. And then he's running again through a marsh. Page 83. He thinks, how are we going to find the marshes? Or how are we going to find the cauldron? Okay? So they go on, and we're told, Eilonwy says, there's no telling what Ellidyr has in mind. If you hadn't made him jealous over a silly horse. Terran, I feel pity for Ellidyr. Why?
Because he finally understands what's going on with Ellidyr.
Adion once told me he saw a black beast on Ellidyr's shoulders. Now I understand a little what he meant. Why? He saw it too in his own dream. Alani says, well, I'm surprised to hear you say that, but it was kind-hearted of you to help Islamak. I'm really glad you did. I'm sure you meant well. That's encouraging in itself. See, Elodie doesn't think he meant well. It does make a person think there might be some hope for you after all. Not really that great a praise. So as they make their way forward, Taryn is wearing this brooch. And notice what starts to happen to his senses. The day was bright and crisp, page 84, and as Menelaus cantered over the frosty ground, Taryn caught sight of a glittering dew-covered web on a hawthorn branch, and of the spider busily repairing it. Well, that's not hard to see. Taryn was aware, strangely, of vast activities along the forest trail. Squirrels preparing their winter hoard. Ants laboring in their earthen castles. He could see them clearly. Not with his eyes, but in a way he'd never known before. And then he notices even the air has special scents. A ripple sharp and clear like cold wine. He knew the north wind had just begun to rise. He turns his horse toward the scent. Okay? And he says, there's water nearby. And they go and they find the water, and who else do they find? They find Fluter, who'd gotten separated. Okay? Page 86. Fluter explains, if we go too far south, we'll end up in the sea and we'll miss the marshes. But Taryn himself could offer no suggestions. The trees thinned out behind him, the companions entered a wide rolling meadow. Taryn, half dozing in the saddle, his clock rope wrapped around his shoulders, roused himself uneasily. The meadow, with its high grass stretching all around them, was familiar. And he remembers the dream. He glances overhead. He sees the bird. And he says, I know how to get there. He tells Eilonwy, it's not my doing. Adion spoke the truth. His gift is a precious one. And he tells her about the clasp and the dreams. Don't you see? I dreamed about Fluter's harp, and we found Fluter himself. It wasn't my idea. It just came to me. And there was another dream, a terrible one, of wolves. And Eilonwy says, you can't tell me it was all because of a piece of iron. I don't care how magical it is. He says, I don't mean that. What I believe is that Adion understood these things anyway. Even with his clasp, there is much I do not understand. All I know is that I feel differently somehow. I can see things I never saw before. Things that I know. And I don't even know how I know. And what happens? They get chased by wolves. He shows the clasp to Fluter, and he says it's got a bardic symbol on it. Okay? And the bardic symbol, page 90, means knowledge, truth, love. Eilonwy, that's very nice. But I can't imagine why knowledge, truth, and love should be so much of a secret. Fluter says, well, it's not really a secret. It's unusual. I sometimes think it's hard enough to find any one of them even separately. Put them all together and you have something very powerful indeed. That is, it's hard enough to find knowledge in a person, in a thing, in a place, in oneself. It's hard enough to find truth in a person, place, thing, oneself. It's hard enough to find love. But you combine all three of those, then you have power. Okay? To hear the wolves, they go on. They make their way across the marsh, and they find the cottage. They look inside the dirty windows of the cottage, bottom of page 94, and what do they see? In one corner stood a wide loom, with a good many of the threads straggling down. The work on the frame was less than half finished, and so tangled and knotted, he can imagine no one ever continuing it. Excuse me. Broken crockery covered a small table. Rusted and broken weapons were piled about. Why a loom? And who are? Ortho, Orgok,
Or
Ordu.
I think it's actually Orwin.
they're like the fates.
Yeah, I don't have the first one right? Orwin? Orwin, Orgot, and Ordu. What are they? We find out at the end, actually. No, we don't. We find out later in the series.
that they're not witches.
They're not witches. They are akin to the Fates. The three Fates of Greek mythology. You have Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropo. Clotho's the spinner. She weaves the thread of life. Lachesis is the measurer. She measures out your life, how long it'll be. And Atropo is the cutter. She snips the thread when your time is done, according to what Lachesis says. So, they talk with the three, and the three talk to them about turning them into a variety of little critters, toads and birds and things like that. And Taryn mentions Dalbin on page 101. And Ordu says, "Tell me, how is dear little Dalbin?" Gives us an idea of their age. So they talk about little Dalbin for a while, and how he read the Book of Three and immediately knew everything, and how he chose to take the Book of Three, page 105. I'm skipping a bunch. They talk about how Iran had gotten the cauldron, 106 and following. In the bottom of 107, she says, even Iran had to be allowed to have his chance. Ordy says, one day you'll understand for us, for there is a destiny laid on everything, big ugly crocans, as well as poor little ducklings, and a destiny laid even on us. Okay? Orwin says, Iran swore to return it after a time. Time came, he broke his oath, so it came back. Okay? So they come up with a plan to take the cauldron. And I'm going to skip a bunch. Page 114, they figure out it is the black cauldron that they see in the other place. Alonwi says, bottom of 114, that it is full of death and suffering. Now I know why Gwydion wants to destroy it. Taryn thinks maybe they meant for us to find it. Okay? So they go back that night and they look back in the cottage where the three haggard, ugly old ladies live. And page 117, what do they see instead?
Beautiful maidens.
Ilanu says they're beautiful. Taryn, I don't know who they are, but I feel they're more powerful than we could even guess. Okay, he's starting to get a little brains. And notice, bottom of that previous page, 116, Taryn says, here's what I saw when I looked in. One of them was carding wool, one of them was spinning, and the third was weaving. Okay? Carding wool, weaving and spinning. So it still matches up. So I'm going to skip some. We get the price. What must you do to bargain with the three ladies?
Have something to bargain with.
Whatever it is that you have that is your greatest treasure, you've got to give to them in exchange for what you want from them. Okay? So, what do they offer? Page 122. She goes, well, we don't expect you to pay as much as Iran did, but Well, sure, you can find something to offer in exchange. North wind in a bag, maybe? No, can't do that. Okay. Lovely summer afternoon full of sunlight? No, can't do that. What else? She said, well, we've made suggestions. How about you make some? Taryn was silent for a moment, bottom of 123. His face paled as he thought of Adeon's brooch. He says, well, all that remains to me, because he offers his sword. And Gergi says, no, no. Take Gergi's own great treasure. His wallet of never-ending food? No, they don't want that. You get the idea that food's really not that necessary for them. Gergi says, but it's all poor Gergi has to have. So what does Gergi offer?
His only possession.
Everything. Everything. Okay? Arlanwi says, what about jewelry? How about this? Offers him the ring. No. She says, besides, one day you may find some use for it. Arlanwi says, I do have something else. And she pulls out her bauble, her blight orb thing. She offers that. No. Fluter says, okay. Pulls off his harp. Given to him by Taliesin himself. Nope. Are you sure you don't have anything else? They ask the three. They say no. She says, okay, well, sorry. And Taryn finally, 126. There is one thing more. The brooch I wear, the gift of Adeon, son of Taliesin. What's that, a brooch? Taryn lifts his eyes and meets Ordu's. Bottom of 126. For that instant it seemed to him they were quite alone. He raised his hand slowly to his throat, felt the power of the brooch working within him. You have been toying with us, Ordu, he whispered. You saw that I wore Adeon's clasp from the moment we came here, she says, so it's your choice. Yes, we know the brooch. You could have slain us and taken the clasp. Don't you understand? Like knowledge, truth, and love themselves, the clasp must be given willingly, or its power is broken. Yes, and it is filled with power. This, too, you must understand. For Minwi the Bard cast a mighty spell on it, filled it with dreams, wisdom, vision. Think carefully. Once you give that up, it won't come to you again. You would exchange it? Taryn nods. This shall be my bargain. And she says, okay, done. So, Taryn gives them the brooch. They say, cauldron's yours. Page 128. Taryn leads the companions to the stable, where the horses are, and says, each of you would have given up what you treasured most for my sake. Why for my sake? How does he mean that?
Because if they gave something up, you wouldn't have to.
Exactly. You would have given up your greatest treasure, so I wouldn't have to give up mine. Now, you can allegorize that, I think. Each of them would be willing, essentially, to give up their lives so he wouldn't have to. I'm glad Ordu didn't take your heart, Fluter. I know unhappy you'd be without your music, even more than I without my brooch. And Gergi, you should never have tried to sacrifice your food on my account. And Ilamwi, your ring and your bauble are much too useful and beautiful. He says, all of these things are doubly precious now, and so are you, the best of true comrades. Okay? So, Ordu now says, you can't destroy the cauldron, you know. She says there's only one way, page 129. A living person must climb into it. When he does, the kroken will shatter. The only problem is, you don't come out alive. Only way you can destroy the cauldron is for someone to willingly go in knowing what's going to happen. Yes, that's the way of it. The kroken only cost you a brooch, but it will cost a life to destroy it. Not only that, but whoever is willing to do that must know full well what he does. In other words, you can't accidentally destroy the cauldron. You have to go in it knowing what it does. Okay? Terrence says, there's no other way? None whatsoever. So they come up with ideas of what to do to the cauldron. Fluter, hide it, bury it. Tear it. No, we can't. Why? Sooner or later, Iran's going to get it. No, we have to destroy it. What could somebody do right here, right at this point?
They could jump in.
Shorten the novel quite a bit.
Yep.
One of them could jump in. And if you've seen the Disney version Black Cauldron, who does jump in? Gurgi does. Not like in the book. Okay? Well, nothing's like in the book in that movie. So, they go on. And Alonwi tells Taryn, page 132, she puts her hand on his shoulder and says, I realize it's no consolation, but if you look at it in one way, you didn't give up a thing to the enchantresses. Not really. You did exchange the clasp and everything that went along with it. But don't you see? All those things came from the clasp itself. They weren't inside of you. I think it would have been much worse giving up a summer's day. That's part of you, I mean. I know I shouldn't want to give up a single one of mine, or even a winter day for the matter. So when you come right down to it, Urdu didn't take anything from you. Why, you're still yourself. And you can't deny that. How does Taryn take that?
Bitterly.
Yep. I'm just an assistant pig keeper. I should have known that anything else was too good to last. In other words, the class makes him feel what?
More than he is.
More. And Arlanwi says, well, as far as being an assistant pig keeper, I think you're a perfectly marvelous one. No question in my mind, you're the best assistant pig keeper in all Prydain. How many others there are, I'm sure I don't know, but that's beside the point. And I don't think a single one of them would have done what you did. What does she mean? You're the best assistant pig keeper.
That he has the best spirit, the best, values.
Does that relate at all to what Adion said about there's greater honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped with blood? I think what Alexander is partially getting at least, is this idea that whatever you are, you can be good at. Maybe you're a student, maybe you're a stockbroker, maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're a president, maybe you're a governor, maybe you're somebody who rides on the back of a trash truck and picks up trash every day. What they're both suggesting is there is honor in that. In other words, there is honor in the lowliest of jobs and the highest of jobs. It's up to the individual who does those jobs to do what?
To bring the honor to it.
Find that honor. To treat it as honorable. And to therefore be the best president one can be, as well as the best trash person one can be. Taryn, I couldn't have done otherwise. Not if we were to gain the cauldron. Adion knew there was a destiny laid on him. He did not turn from it, though it cost him his life. Very well, if there is a destiny laid on me, I shall face it. I hope only I may face it as well as Adion did his. She says, don't forget, Taryn, no matter what else happens, you won the cauldron for Gwydion and Dalbin and all of us. For that alone you should be proud. He says, yeah, this much have I done. They take the cauldron away. Okay. And what happens? It gets stuck in the river. And Taryn thinks, page 137, hold on a second. There is a destiny laid on us that the Crocan shall never reach Caer Dalbin. Eilonwy, Nonsense. And if you stop now, then you've given up Adion's brooch for nothing. Okay? So they keep trying. And we see a figure step out from the forest. Chapter 17, the choice. And Eladir shows up. And remember, what have we already seen Eladir do?
Lift a horse up.
Lifts the horse by himself. Okay? Eladir makes a comment about how they failed. Terrence says, no, we haven't failed. There's the cauldron right there. Page 145. He tells Eladir how the cauldron can be destroyed. And Eladir challenges him. Bottom of 145. Why do you not climb into it yourself? Surely you're bold enough. Or are you a coward at heart when the test is upon you? Terrence says, we need your help. Okay? So what does he do?
He helps him lift it out, the thing, but only in exchange that he commands the party.
Okay?
And he gets all the credit.
Yeah, he gets all the credit, and they don't tell Morgant or anybody else anything. And he takes the cauldron and escapes. Terran gets washed down the river. The others find him.
After Eladir tried to kill him.
Yeah, after Eladir tries to kill him. Okay? The others find him. Page 154. Going to get us almost done. Terran says, I fear the black beast has swallowed him up, as Adion warned. I pity Eladir from the bottom of my heart. He just tried to kill him. And Terran now feels pity for him. For long I hated him, but in the little while I bore Adion's brooch, I believe I saw him more clearly. His heart is unhappy and tormented. Never shall I forget what he said to me, that I taunted him for seeking glory, yet clung to it myself. And he looks at his hands, with dirty hands. Ilanwi, don't listen to what Eladir said. And yet he spoke the truth. What did the brooch symbolize? Knowledge, truth, love. Terran has just experienced those three things. He's gained knowledge about himself from Eladir. He sees the truth of that knowledge. And what happens? That gets transformed into love for Eladir. That's why he feels pity for him. Ilanwi, did he? I'm not sure. Page 155. Terran says to the others, you have done all more than I could ever ask. Alas, much better than I. Yes, it would be useless now to seek Eladir, as useless as our quest has been. We have forfeited all for nothing. Adion's brooch, our honor, and now the Kroken itself. We shall return to Kirdalbin empty-handed. It is not fitting for a pig boy to seek the same honor as a prince. Ilanwi, pig boy? Don't ever speak of yourself that way. It's okay for Ilanwi to call him that. No matter what has happened, you're not a pig boy. You're an assistant pig keeper. That's honor in itself. Not that they don't mean the same thing when you come right down to it. That is, pig boy, assistant pig keeper means the same thing. But one is proud and the other isn't. Since you have a choice, take the proud one. And Terran says, Adion once told me there is more honor in a field well plowed than in a field steeped with blood. I see now that what he said was true above all. I do not begrudge Eladir his prize. I too shall seek honor. And what does he say?
But I shall seek it where I know it will be found.
Where will it be found for him?
At Kirdalbin.
Doing what?
Attending to Henwin.
Being an assistant pig keeper. In other words, honor isn't only gained through fighting great heroic battles. That's what he thinks it is. Okay? So, they get captured by King Morgant.
He turns out to be evil.
And Terran discovers he's a traitor. Okay? They find Eladir. And what do we see? Chapter 19, the Warlord. There's a bunch here I would normally talk about. Actually, we'll stop there. We'll pick up with chapter 19 on Thursday. But you need to start, if you haven't, and read about half of the Castle of Lear for Thursday. If we have a quiz, it'll be over there. Man.
Have a good day.